ground program. I am Dene, Toda Cheatney and Shle, Toa Haglini, Bushes Chin, Clash Edisha Do Taba Hedeshanella, Aquat Adena Assan Shle, not Najoja Asia Hawan. Greetings, relatives. My name is Talia Boyd. I'm based in Gallup, New Mexico. I come from the Navajo Nation. My first clan is Bitterwater Clan, one of the 4 original clans on Navajo. And then I'm born for water coming together. My maternal grandfather is Red Bottom, and my paternal grandfather is Water's Edge. So, yeah, thank you, relatives, for joining us today. Again, I come from the Navajo Nation. For folks who don't know, our nation has been inundated with extraction for quite some time now, everything from coal, uranium, oil, and gas. Our waters have been contaminated and compromised over the years. And so we have a lot of concerns throughout our homelands around water contamination, around cumulative studies when it comes to soil, air, and water, and health studies. And so these are things that we have been pleading for a very long time. I'm also a proud mother. I have one son, and I have a lot of nephews and nieces and grandchildren. My nephews have kids, so I'm also a grandma in that way. And so I do this for the kids, and I come again from a frontline community. I'm originally from Tonalea, Arizona, and every day on my way to school, I used to pass what we call the Tuba City disposal site, which is a former uranium mill. And that place was contaminated. It was not covered. It was not capped. There was no fence, and there was no signs to let people know that it was a contaminated area. I then moved to New Mexico, and my family moved to Church Rock, New Mexico. And I later found out that it was ground zero for the 1979 Church Rock spill, which is the largest radioactive spill in U.S. history to this date. We just celebrated the 46th commemoration this past weekend with the community of the Redwater Pond Road Community Association. And so I'm very honored to be able to join my relatives there and to honor our relatives who have fought for a very long time for justice. And so also before we start, I'd really love to just have people and say that wherever you are within Turtle Island, you are on native land, and that we predate the so-called United States. And so thank you to all our relatives who are tuning in and joining us from wherever you are within Turtle Island. I also want to go ahead and welcome Carletta. Carletta is our final panelist for this evening. So thank you, Carletta, for joining us. We're just doing a brief introduction. I just got done introducing myself and IEN. And then I'm just going to briefly give your names and your titles and your organizations. And then I'm going to pass the mic to you ladies so you can introduce yourselves. Okay, so we have here today, we have Carla Ray Marshall, who is Oglala Lakota, and she is with the Black Hills Clean Water Alliance. We also have Mary Gibson, who is Western Shoshone. She is with the Noowuh Knowledge Center, and she is based in Nevada. We have Carletta Talusi, who is with the Havasupai tribe, and she's with the Havasupai Uranium Committee. We also have Kesa Whitley, who's absentee Shawnee in Kiowa, and she's with the Westin Resistance. So excellent panel this evening. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. And we're going to do our best, relatives, to unpack this information and share with you what's happening on the ground. We have a lot of moccasins on the ground in our homelands, and so we want to share that important work. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Carla Ray and have her introduce herself. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia. Greetings, relatives. Kilamaye for inviting me to speak with everybody here. It's an honor to be here with so many great women leaders. My name is Carla Ray Marshall. I am Titawan Lakota, Minikoju Ogala. I am living here in our sacred Havasupai, which is the Black Hills, located down in South Dakota and Wyoming. I work with the Black Hills Clean Water Alliance as a consultant and community organizer as well, along with some other hats that I wear. So doing the website and different technical things like that, but do research and all kinds of fun things. Um, like Talia had mentioned, our sacred Havasupai is under attack from gold, silver, lithium, rare earths, and now graphite. So Black Hills Clean Water Alliance was actually formed in 2009. So I've been doing this work for quite some time now. I actually started way back in the late 70s, so that's kind of dating myself, but started with the Black Hills Alliance at that time, fighting uranium mining, and we actually won on one of the projects that was trying to get started back in 79. But so we started in 2009 to combat a proposed uranium ISL mine, which is still in the permitting process and in legal battles. In 2007, we started tracking gold projects because we seen a uptick in gold mining exploration projects trying to come into our sacred lands and our watershed. So now we're seeing an uptick in lithium and graphite too. So altogether, we're monitoring about 16 companies and their projects, and many of these companies have two projects that going on at the same time. Some of them are on federal land, so we do get that process to comment, and some of them are state lands where we don't get a commenting opportunity. But the Havasupai, or the Black Hills, is an unceded treaty territory under the Fort Laramie Treaties of 1851 and 1868. The Havasupai is known to us, Lakota, as Wamake Ogonaka Ichante, which is the heart of everything that is. It's a very sacred land for us. The Havasupai holds eons of memory in our DNA, and water is our main entity. That's what I truly believe. But the Black Hills, it's located on the western part of South Dakota and the northeast part of Wyoming. So this is relatively a small area. It's considered a small oasis on the Great Plains and one of the oldest land formations in the United States or in Turtle Island. So, but it also has spiritual connection to other Great Plains indigenous nations as well. So for us, the Havasupai tell our creation story, are coming into beings as human beings. They hold our traditional teachings, our hold spaces for our spiritual ceremonies. They provide our natural foods and plant medicines, and of course our water. The waters here flow from the Black Hills and go east to the Missouri River. And then from the Missouri River, that of course goes down into the Mississippi. So species of wildlife and some endangered, like the Black Hills mountain snail. So that's just kind of a brief. But like our precious, wildlife, we too have had to fight to survive and protect our sacred lands from the many abuses over the past 150, 200 years of colonizers, settlers, homesteaders, and of course miners. Gold was discovered in 1874, but there's accounts of it being discovered prior to that as well. But like many of you here, my ancestors experienced the genocide, the massacres, murders, rapes, addictions, boarding school abuse. But we're survivors, and we continue to protect the sacred people, plants, water, and wildlife. So in our region, I'm going to share my screen right now because I have a map that I want to share with you all.
Before we start with that, can we go ahead and finish introducing the panel?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to. Okay,
we're just doing quick intro, and then we'll jump in.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I just kind of took off. Yeah. So that's who I am, and I will continue.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, just a quick, brief introduction, ladies, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the content. So we'll go ahead and pass the mic to Mary. Mary, can you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Gibson. I am a descendant of the Western Shoshone Nation and a citizen of the Tomoe tribe of Western Shoshone. I live in Nevada. I am also the founder and executive director of Noowuh Knowledge Center. We are a cultural preservation organization that has a, a new focus. We are focusing on our land defenders and our treaty defenders here. So our collections, our archive collections, belong to a lot of our people who stood to protect the lands and waters here in Nevada. And so I'm proud and happy to carry on that history through our archives. Um, I am a librarian by profession and also an archivist, and I have served on several library boards during my career, which I'm very happy to have done so and served. I also have a passion. My passion is our land and our water and our people. And I am involved in environmental justice work, and I am especially involved in our treaty and our treaty rights along with that. And I appreciate having this opportunity to speak with you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Carletta.
Hello, everyone. Gamije Nyasivio Carletta Telusi Exitge Hangyo Vanyavam Tikavama. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carletta Telusi. I'm from the Havasupai tribe. My tribe is located in northern Arizona in the Grand Canyon on the west side of the Grand Canyon in a side canyon called Cataract Canyon, where the Havasupai people reside for many years. My tribe is about 676 tribal members left, and I'm happy to be here and joining you guys through Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Carletta. Next, I'd like to pass the mic to Kesa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kesa. I'm the coalition coordinator for Westin Resistance. We're currently fighting the first critical elements refinery that's being built in the so-called US. It's being built in Oklahoma on the ancestral lands of the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache tribes, as well as the Wichita, Caddo, and Delaware. Yeah, so that's kind of who we are.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies. Again, this is a phenomenal panel, and I appreciate you all making time to join us this evening. Again, just to reiterate, we are going to be talking about Executive Order 14154, Unleashing American Energy, and the impacts to tribal nations. A lot of our tribal communities are on the front lines when it comes to critical mineral mining, when it comes to uranium mining. And so these ladies are going to be speaking on those impacts today. But before we get started, I'd just like to provide a little bit of context around this executive order. It's a pretty hefty executive order, and the title kind of says it all, right? Unleashing American Energy. But before we dive into that, I'd really like to also touch on the 1872 mining law. And this is for folks who aren't very familiar with, the mining realm and why extraction is so prevalent, especially when it comes to in indigenous communities. A lot of our indigenous communities are on a lot of these mines are on or near our communities. And so again, we are on the front lines and we see the impacts from that, the adverse impacts. And so the 1872 mining law really does kind of leave the floodgates open. And as you can tell by the date or the year, 1872, it's grossly outdated. This law does not have any environmental protections. And so it needs to be taken out. We don't We don't need it. It's not doing anybody any good. People have talked about reforming it or amending it. But I think we need to get rid of it and create a whole new law that actually has environmental protections, that would speak to the frontline communities that need those protections as well. And so this is why a lot of our communities are still dealing with mining throughout Indian country. And again, this is going to take an act of Congress in order for us to do anything about the 1872 mining law. This requires long-term organizing and mobilizing on the ground. And so we need a lot of moccasins on the ground when it comes to this issue. It's a big issue, the 1872 mining law, and we could do a whole webinar on that alone. So maybe we should, but I'll stop there with that. Again, just to dive into the executive order, and to give folks a little bit of context around it, this executive order really does dismantle and revoke a lot of key previously established environmental protections. I think there's 12 key, specifically key environmental executive orders that were revoked through this one executive order. A lot of them revolved around environmental justice. And so it does prioritize increased mining and extraction on federal lands and tribal lands, and that includes offshore waters. It will increase energy exploration and production in oil and gas, also coal, hydropower, biofuels, nuclear energy, and critical minerals. It aims to deregulate domestic mineral production and processing by stripping away those key environmental protections, fast-tracking permits, and accelerating federal funding. And we say our Indigenous rights, our territories, and our ancestral homelands are not sacrifice zones. We have a right to say no to harmful extraction, and to these industries that adversely impact the land, the air, and the water, and the health of all living beings. And so, again, this is why we wanted to come together tonight to talk about this executive order and how, again, it really is kind of pushing to increase the domestic supply chain here within the U.S., right? Right now, we know that China is kind of the leader when it comes to processing critical minerals. I think they do about 90% of it. America wants to be that global leader, and so they're creating these executive orders in order to do that, right? Again, to really strip away those environmental protections, to fast track permitting for development, and rolling back a lot of those key protections. One thing it really did too is it revoked Executive Order 1291. That's an executive order from 1977, and I think that's President Carter's era. But what that did, it was the Council on Environmental Quality, what we call the CEQ, and how it implements NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. It's an important law requiring environmental impact assessments for federal major actions or developments, right? What this order did is it directed the CEQ chair to issue new NEPA guidance within 30 days, right? And it proposed scrapping the existing CEQ regulations entirely. And then there was a working group that was formed to revise the agency's rules so that they could permits and accelerating funding for this development. Again, it really is a way they wanted all the agencies to use all the tools available. And that also included using emergency powers if needed to fast track these permits. It also suggested that Congress should step in to make permitting easier for energy projects crossing state lines and streamline court challenges related to NEPA. And so for frontline communities, that's absolutely detrimental. And we know that NEPA is one of those environmental processes where we're able to step up and stand against some of these mines, when it comes to public comment, when it comes to being an intervener. So there's different avenues that we utilize in order to do those things. And NEPA is one of those federal processes, again, that helps us to do that. They also talked about withdrawing public lands for mining. and then updating the critical list to include uranium. So that was a lot of the other key pieces that were a part of this executive order. And so what we're seeing is a really strong drive, again, to roll back those environmental protections and any climate initiatives and to really streamline the regulations. Again, it's kind of through this lens of economic and national security for energy and minerals, right? And so it's very alarming for Indian country. Again, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been fighting nuclear colonialism and just environmental racism for over, since the invasion of Turtle Island, and since our minerals have been identified within our homelands, right? And so tonight, we want to go ahead and dig in and talk a little bit about what's happening on the ground within our communities. How are we continuing to mobilize and organize when it comes to these kinds of executive orders? And I really would love to do one on deep sea mining as well, to talk about some of the offshore waters and how there's a lot of push for deep sea mining as well, and how the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is actively assessing offshore deposits like polymetallic nodules and heavy mineral sands. And so those are other conversations that we were hoping to have. We could dive in even deeper and talk about, they're talking about mining minerals on the moon and whatnot. So it gets nuts, guys. But let's go ahead and start with the questions that I have for our panelists. Excuse me. Okay, so this is going to be an open dialogue, open format. I'm going to ask the question, and then we're going to have our panelists go around and answer the questions. And so we'll kind of keep the order that we had. We'll start with Carla Ray. And if you could just, with this first question, how has the fast tracking of mines impacted your homelands? And you're in South Dakota.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of like I said, companies coming in. Some of them are from Australia, Switzerland, and Canada, of course. And we are seeing them, like with the Forest Service. If they want to mine on federal lands, then they have to go through the Forest Service and have they do their scoping. First, they send their application, and then they have to do their scoping. And the fast track that comes is that we're seeing where we used to have like a 60-day public comment, that's now reduced down to 30 days. So we just finished a 30-day comment period for a gold exploration project from Solitario Resources called the Ponderosa Project. And we did get 1,774 comments that came in. But at the same time, we're really happy about that. And the majority of people are saying, no, don't mine in the Black Hills anymore. So I think this fast tracking is for the federal government. It's, they reduce the comment period. For the state, if it's on state land or private land, it has to go through the state, and the state doesn't give you any opportunity to do comments. So that's another way they're fast tracking. They just give them a just sign off on it and send it through. So some of these exploration projects we're seeing, like with Dakota Gold, who is up in the northern Black Hills. Yeah, so they're one of their companies that I guess fund them or whatever is called Barrick Gold, and they're a huge conglomerate of gold mining companies too. So I think that's one of the ways. And then tribal consultation is usually, pushed through real fast. Or I know one of the projects in the Northern Hills through Solitario Resources, they pushed that through Even though, get tribal consultation and the tribes are saying no, then they still do it anyway. So that's kind of what we're up against.
Thank you, Carla Ray. Yeah, I know there's a lot going on in the Black Hills, and this is why we thought it was really important to include the voices from the Black Hills, is because although there's not any mines that are listed on the 41 fast track list, we know that the Black Hills is always under attack, right? With all the rich minerals within Hisapa, not only uranium, but also rare earth elements, and the list goes on. And so we know that having the voices from Hisapa and the Black Hills is super important. And so we want to continue to highlight those voices there. Let's go ahead and move to Mary. Mary, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening on the ground in Nevada? We know that, Thacker Pass is a really popular lithium mine that we're hearing about a lot within Indian country. And I know there's probably a couple more out there. Can you just tell us a little bit about what's going on the ground out in Nevada?
Sure. First, I'd like to mention some of the mining that happens here in Nevada. There's the most common minerals being mined is silver, lithium, copper, and barite. With lithium being pretty heavy on the permitting side. We're currently in Nevada as of March 2025, there's been 15,366 active mining permits, and they're presumably for lithium mining. And so the way that fast tracking is impacting the state of Nevada is, number one, if I could share my screen real quickly to show you the map of Nevada and some mining areas. Do I just do share? Sorry.
There you go.
Let me see. So here's a map of the mining claims in Nevada. And most of them are here in partially central and then western Nevada. But then also I do want to share with you all our treaty map. The Western Shoshone made a treaty with the United States in October 1 of 1863. Our treaty didn't cede any land. It did give certain privileges to the United States, mining being one of them. But mining in 1863 is a lot different than mining in 2025. But here is a map of our treaty land. Again, we didn't cede the land at all. And so I wanted to share and give you a visual of what our country looks like, meaning Western Shoshone country, and in comparison to the state of Nevada and where much of the mining permits for lithium are coming from. And so on the ground, of course, Carla mentioned it. We have a lot of issues going. Isn't proper consultation with the tribes. It seems like it's just basically correspondence is what they're considering as consultation, and whether or not the tribes respond, it's hard to say at this point. And so with things around mining in Nevada, we have a couple of them that were on the fast track, and that was in addition to Thacker Pass and McDermott exploration project. We do have a few that is happening now in lithium minings that has been permitted, and that's at Railroad Valley, which is really close to the Duckwater Shoshone Indian Reservation. And of course, all this is going to impact us. culturally, we've got cultural sites. It's going to interrupt with hunting and gathering, and then ceremonies as well, not to mention the disruption and impact on wildlife. And with the
Mary,
Yeah.
just real quickly, you can stop sharing your screen.
times, I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Uh, so is that better? Stop share. Okay. So those are the ways in which we are impacted with mining in Nevada, and especially with lithium mining. It's really quite overwhelming. And I know our people, our leadership in our tribal governance agencies, it probably is very overwhelming to try to keep up. And so what happens is a prioritization. But when you saw our ancestral and treaty territory map, that's a large portion of Nevada. And again, I said Nevada is a pro-mining state. And so they welcome any kind of mining, and they are happy that BLM and the other agencies do these permitting. They don't do anything um, to stop the permits, and that seems to be a problem here in Nevada, as well as at Thacker Pass and the McDermott Caldera. Those areas are Paiute and Shoshone ancestral territories as well. And of course, Thacker Pass happened during the undercover of COVID-19, when everything in the country was shuttered, and the community of the Paiute Shoshone of Fort McDermott really had no realization of what was happening at the time. And so it all became a surprise to many of the tribal members that this mine, the council at that time was okay with having Thacker Pass, and not giving information, not disseminating the information very well. So it took a lot of tribal members by surprise about Thacker Pass. And yes, it is very much in the news with how the Paiute and Shoshone and other indigenous people have come together to try to protect the area.
Yeah, absolutely, Mary. Thank you so much. And just to give a shout out to some other organizers out there, like people at Red Mountain, and other folks who have had their moccasins on the ground for a long time. And then too, just to talk about Nevada and how militarized it is, right? It's one of those states that's highly militarized, very much like Alaska. And so it is very much pro extraction and pro mining. And we've seen that play out quite a bit there. And then just to give a shout out too to Apache Stronghold and some of our other relatives who are facing some of these major fast track mining projects down in Oak Flat, right? We really wanted some folks from Apache Stronghold to join us as well. And so maybe we can continue to have these conversations and really extend it into a series so that we can bring all of these voices in. But thank you for touching on that, Mary, because I think it's super important. It took a lot of, there was more than 3 tribes that were involved when it came to Thacker Pass. There wasn't proper consultation with the tribes because, that mine was right on a cultural site, a sacred burial site. And so there was a lot of tribes that didn't have proper consultation. So that was a big problem. There was a lot of court hearings. A lot of people did a lot of sacrifice to mobilize and organize to raise the tribal voices there. So shout out to all of the organizers who did that work and continue to do that work, as we know it ain't easy. Okay, thank you so much, Mary. I want to go ahead and pass it over to Carletta. And if Carletta, can you just kind of highlight what's happening in Havasupai? And we know right now there's active uranium mining with the Pinyon Plain mine. And we know that there's a lot of nuances there too with all of the uranium mining here in the Southwest. But if you could just give us a little bit about what's happening currently with all of that, and kind of how some of that fast tracking of those permits has happened there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your issues. Think it's very important that we communicate with each other and know what's going on in our communities. So thank you for putting this Zoom together, because every day I'm also learning on what's happening in your areas. And it helps in a strange way, encourages us, because sometimes it feels like we're alone and we've been fighting this by ourselves. But when we know that some of our tribal communities in different parts of Turtle Island are working in different areas, I think it's encouraging in a way. Also, with Havasupai, I just want to say that we have been fighting this uranium mining issue since I was a child, since I was born into this work. My family was very outspoken about protecting the waters of our community. And I was just born into this family. It wasn't a choice that I had. It was almost like just we were in this and for the long haul. And so throughout my lifetime, my tribe has fought either in legal courts to stop the permitting from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. They've been just issuing the permits, renewing the permits through the state for these mining companies that are coming in. They're coming in from different parts of the world as well. And when you look at this quick map, I wanted to pull up, was a lot of these claims. There was a lot more claims when I was a child. There was about 200,000 uranium claims on the North and South Rim, about approximately. And so we started developing this map with the help of a local NGO in 2023. And if you look closely, you could kind of see the different companies that were also a part of this that might be also working in your backyards as well. But strangely enough, it was this map shows the Grand Canyon from east to west. This top portion shows can you pull back just a little bit, please, so we can see the companies that are, a lot of them are from Great Britain, Canada, um, Australia. These people are filing claims in federal public lands because of the 1872 mining law that has opened the door for these companies to come into these Forest Service lands and file, and they start doing exploratory drilling first, and then they stake a claim, and then they start filing for the plan of operations through the Forest Service, and then they start applying for permitting groundwater aquifer permits from the state of Arizona. So that was the kind of the steps that I've been watching throughout my lifetime. And my tribe fought hard for Pinon Plain Mine, which is located down at the bottom right. You'll see it says Pinon Plain Uranium Mine, formerly known as Canyon Mine, because over the years they changed their name. And partly because, there's a lot of pressure from the local communities, and not just tribal communities. There's 13 tribes that surround the Grand Canyon that consider the Grand Canyon as a sacred place. We have a Zoom call knowing that this administration is taking such horrific actions against our sacred places and our waters. So we have 13 tribes that are active, tribal leaders, and I happen to be their coordinator. And so because of what's happening with these executive orders coming, getting pushed out of the White House, and so Pinon Plain Mine down at the bottom is active. They started, first gave us notice last year, July 30th, saying that they're going to continue mining after all these years of standing off with the Havasupai tribe. And of course, we lost in court with the state permitting process. We lost in court all the way up to the Supreme Court, just the same path that the Apaches are taking. We've been down that path as well, and unfortunately, in the Havasupai tribal case, we've lost all our legal capacity, and so and that's over the years of my lifetime. But transportation of uranium is happening. They first started with 3 cars or 3 huge diesel trucks and started taking it through the town of Williams and up through Flagstaff and up through Navajo Nation, Hopi Nation, and San Juan Paiutes. They don't like it, what's going on. But again, we've lost all of the legal capacity in our position. I think the other tribes still have that ability to do that, but in Havasupai, that's what happened. It's just a very sad case of affairs. But all these other uranium claims that you see here have been eliminated due to the 1872, I'm sorry, due to the Grand Canyon Baj Nawagja Ita Ku'uvini National Monument. All those uranium mining claims have been eliminated through the Biden administration, but Pinon Plain Mine remained because of the 1872 mining law, and they had an active claim. So that one remained there. And so I think what happened was the mining company just got really upset because when Biden declared and eliminated a lot of the 600 uranium claims, the mining company in retaliation said, okay, we're going to start mining. And that's just my observation and my opinion. And so they are hauling right now through public roads. And this is on, again, for Kaibab Forest Service lands, risking people on the road, risking tribal communities, chapter houses, and the animals that are on this road. I mean, this road is not a safe road, and a lot of us know that. It's a one-way, two-way road that accidents happen all the time. And so they're hauling this uranium in spite of all the opposition of not only the tribes, but also the city of Flagstaff, the city of Williams. They don't like what's going on, but they're pinning us down to this, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Glancing at this executive order, all these mining claims may come back, so really nervous moving forward, what's going to be happening, and the future of our children, of our what the cleanup that they have to deal with and the work that they have to deal with. So I'm really concerned about the youth right now and the next generation, but that's what's happening. We are in alliance with a lot of the organizations locally in Arizona, Sierra Club, Grand Canyon Trust, IEN, folks that can send the word out to what's happening down here in the Southwest in Northern Arizona. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carletta. Yeah, there's a lot there. And then to me, just being based in the Southwest and being Navajo, this hits home for me too. And there's the transportation route going through our homelands, there's a lot of opposition against it, and the feds are saying, they have right of way, state and federal right of way through these highways, which is why they're going through these tribal homelands, even though Navajo has a law against the transportation of radioactive material through our homelands. And we also have a moratorium, a ban on uranium mining within our homelands. This is still a very, very much something that we weren't consulted on, even within our own tribal government. The Navajo Nation didn't consult the frontline communities that are along the transportation route within Navajo, and they didn't consult the surrounding tribes like Hopi, Southern San Juan Paiute, Ute Mountain Ute, which is where this uranium ore is being transported to the Energy Fuels Mill in White Mesa, and that's the last operating conventional uranium mill in the country. And this is on the ancestral lands of the Ute Mountain Ute, and so there's a lot there. They're also proposing and have been trying to take all this U.S. government abandoned uranium mine waste here on Navajo. We have over 520 abandoned uranium mines. They don't know what to do with this waste. There's nowhere in the world for a permanent repository. This is the problem with nuclear. You know, they're always talking about how green and clean it is, but they don't talk about how carbon and water intensive it is, the front end of the nuclear fuel chain, right? And then they don't talk about the permanent radioactive waste that comes out of this, and the fact that we don't have anywhere to store it, right? So what happens is that this stuff is being stored in interim across the country in different facilities, and you know, everybody is at risk because they're using major highways and major railways to transport this stuff. And you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about some fast track mining projects here in New Mexico as well. Roca Honda mine and the La Jera Mesa mine, kind of both around our sacred mountain of Mount Taylor, and some of the transportation routes that they'll be taking there. Amazing work that she's doing with Westin Resistance around confronting the Westin Elements refinery. So, Kisa, go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are currently fighting against Western Elements. They are the first critical elements refinery that would potentially be built here on Turtle Island. What we've seen is like we don't necessarily have any mines that have been like fast tracked, but we're still seeing the effects of the fast tracking of mines because essentially, like Talia was talking about earlier, there is a push to domesticate the supply chain. And so that's where Westwind Elements really comes into play, is because they would be one of the only processing facilities, if not the only processing facility on Turtle Island. What we are seeing is basically our local and state governments are repeating like a national rhetoric. And so, whatever these executive orders are that are being pushed out, our government officials will then go and approve projects that coincide with those executive orders. And so we aren't just fighting things like Western Elements. We do have projects like Stardust Lithium is coming here. We also have Firehawk that's coming, and they'll be in the same industrial park as Westwind Elements, and they'll be producing dry rocket fuel. And so because of this like push to fast track, what we're seeing is a lot of these projects that are getting approved, there's less regulations and there's less like enforcement as far as like safety and proving like not just safety as far as like keeping people safe, but like environmental safety that has also been like gutted. We saw that through things like NEPA and EPA getting gutted. And so that means that these projects are coming in less regulated. Like Western Elements was, I think, less than 70 days old when our city started like signing agreements with them. Firehawk is like around 5 years old, and they're going to be producing dry rocket fuel within 300 feet of a residential area. And so all of those things are being approved because of the executive orders that are being pushed down and because of the rhetoric that the person who currently holds that office is pushing. And then what we're also seeing is that because of the like consolidation of entities, there's a lot of confusion amongst themselves as far as like who's regulating what. And so we're still seeing the effects of the fast tracking of the mines, even though we don't necessarily have those projects.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting all of that. And it's so true. Like all the rhetoric that we're hearing, you know, and this has been regurgitated over and over, and we hear it over and over again within doing the work. So thank you for highlighting that, Kisa. I know there's been a lot of mobilization and more folks who are uplifting that resistance there. So very, very appreciative of all you guys who are holding it down there. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next question. And so I'll go ahead and roll back to Carla Ray. What are some mechanisms that Indigenous people can utilize to protect the land, air, and water? And I did provide a couple examples, like, you know, we could talk about free, prior, and informed consent, but I'd really love for you to dive in there. Thanks, Carla.
Well, I think so one of the mechanisms, I guess, we our experience here is more organizations, Indigenous organizations coming together and collaborating on, say, like the public comments. I think without like Indian Collective or IEN or Honor the Earth, or some of the organizations that have been really pushing for people to sign, uh, do a public comment on some of these gold exploration, we were able to get that many. One of them was so for we have a local company here called Peatland and Son, which does gravel and cement, and now they are looking at doing graphite. So the graphite mine it's called the Rochford Mineral Exploration, and it's on federal land. So it did go through scoping and a public comment period. But one of their mining claims that we looked at seems to overlap our sacred Peshla, which is tribal lands. But there was 2,146 comments submitted. And so we were really happy about that, so I think it's just collaborating with people, making sure the tribes are aware of what's going on, because right now, the tribes are out on the plains. We do have tribal people living here in the Havasupai, but as far as our tribal governments go, they're out on the plains. So sometimes they, if the Forest Service sends them a notice, they might not get it right away until it's, day before that they have to do their comment or their tribal consultation. I think the other thing that I'm seeing is that more and more people, especially non-natives living here in the Black Hills, or homeowners like in Spearfish Canyon or close to Peshla or some of our areas, they're really looking at tribal ecological knowledge and trying to work with Indigenous people to make sure that we kind of work together to secure some of these areas. So it's just a matter of getting the word out, community organizing, making sure that we are sending out notices through email or our social media. Social media has also been one of the mechanisms that we have been using a lot, and getting pretty good at it now. So I think that's the other thing, is use all the tools that you can find in your tool belt to to make sure you get people to get involved and to spark their interest, and to make sure that they send their comments in and talk to other people as well. So
Yes, thank you, Carla Ray. Absolutely.
welcome.
The public comment periods are so important, and it is a huge thing when we can get people out there to do that. So yeah, shout out to all the orgs who have been doing that. I know Honor the Earth has been doing really good at helping y'all do the public comment. So shout out to y'all. What was another thing I wanted to touch on real quick that you talked about? Oh, TEK, traditional ecological knowledge. Within Indigenous communities, our traditional knowledge systems are still very much active, and we still practice our worldviews and our life ways very much. And within those traditional knowledge systems, they're very much sophisticated and complex, but there's also solutions within our traditional knowledge system. So when we incorporate that into our organizing, it's super powerful, and this is from generations of living with the natural world and having regenerative relationships there, right? So thank you for touching on that. And I think those are one of the really great ways that we've been able to protect our lands and waters too. For example, like with the Bears Ears, right? I've worked with on Bears Ears a few years ago, and how co-management can really be a big way to help amplify tribal voices, but to also protect the lands and waters as well. So I want to go ahead and shift over to Mary and see what you can share with us when it comes to some of the mechanisms Indigenous peoples can utilize when it comes to protecting our land and water.
When I was asked that question, prayer immediately came to mind. Indigenous people are prayerful people, and our prayers can go a long way. An example of what we could do to protect our land and water, back in early 2000, the Western Shoshone went to the United Nations, particularly because a couple of Western Shoshone women and my relatives and ancestors were experiencing problems not only with the government's accusation of trespassing, letting their cattle on the range without proper permitting, but also trying to protect, which is just as the crow flies 10 miles down from where they had their ranch. But they ended up going there because we couldn't, I should say, they couldn't feel there was any type of relief that could be given here in the United States. So they went to the International Forum, and the Intercommission on American Human Rights and the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination both agreed that Western Shoshone human rights were being violated, simply because of this was our land. We have a right to our land and our livelihood. And the environmental impacts and the degradation was also another point of abuse of human rights. But not only human rights, we have the rights of Mother Earth. I mean, everything that's living on this land has should have a right to life, just as you and I. And so, our animals and marine life, everything is being put to the wayside for mining and fast tracking. But the people of Red Mountain and the people working at Thacker Pass also went to seek relief outside of the U.S. government and the agencies and so forth that's supposed to help protect the land and people. They also went and wanted to seek relief through Amnesty International and the Human Rights Watch. And they also reported the same human rights abuses that they're experiencing as well. Free, prior, and informed consent is a big thing among the Indigenous people. We have a right to say no to what happens on our land, and that's being ignored, very much so. So a lot of these mechanisms to help us in on our own land, in our own little countries, aren't working for us. So I don't know. I guess when I mentioned prayer, I was thinking, praying for these people who have the power or think they have the power to do these things, and just pray that they can find compassion, empathy, to realize perhaps maybe some of the decisions that they make aren't always good, especially for life in general. I would just hope that that they would, continue with meaningful consultation with Indigenous people and recognize that we do have inherent rights. This is our land. We are original people to this land, and many of us have treaties that are being ignored. So I think, I don't know how much the international forums have done for us, except maybe we have it on record, but we keep going, we keep moving, we keep wanting to keep our treaty in focus, and that includes what happens on the land. So I think, you know, if we can find those human rights organizations that have any type of influence, maybe that is a way. And then, of course, to protect our lands, we have to be on our land, especially when I showed you our territory is quite vast. And that's what we hear from these agencies, such as Bureau of Land Management. He said, they say you're not out there. There's nobody out here on these lands, but they don't realize we are. And we're, you know, we do what we have been taught to do culturally and traditionally. There are some of us who still use that land if we have access to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for touching on that. You know, and thank you for touching on working on an international level. You know, oftentimes we get frustrated with trying to deal with the feds or even the states, and we have to take it to the federal level, right? But then too, I want to just also share that, you know, a few years ago, organizing here in my own community, we're fighting a proposed uranium mine, and we took it to the county level. You know, we took it to our county commissioners, and we pushed on them to push for a temporary moratorium on uranium mining in our county. And we knew that, you know, we got immediate pushback, of course, from like the state land office and the uranium company itself. But we continued to push on our county commissioners to the point where they promised that they would form a blue ribbon task force, right, to start assessing the cumulative impacts from uranium mining. But then they started backpedaling on it almost immediately, right? And so I think it would behoove communities to also try working on your local level, try working on a county level, pushing on your county commissioners. You know, with this current administration, you know, we're kind of spinning our wheels working with federal agencies right now. So it might be good for us to start working more on a local level, whether it's on the county or even within your own tribal nation, right? And so I just wanted to share that as well. But let's go ahead and pass it over to Carletta. And again, we just wanted to know, what are some mechanisms that Indigenous peoples can utilize to protect their land, air, and water? And we had a couple of examples. So if you could share a little bit, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that we've been doing is doing our own soil testing. And, you know, it's a lot of money to do it. And, you know, sometimes it was, in the beginning, was like easy to say, oh, let's do it, our own soil testing and challenge what their records are saying. And so the preliminary findings was pretty outrageous. And I think a lot of it was coming from, and we're still unfolding the testing that's happening. I mean, we're still trying to understand the first data sets, and then we're doing another second data set, and finding a ally. We found an ally within a university that was willing to work with us. And the first batch of study we did was the soils were already contaminated from what I understand was a nuclear testing that was happening in Nevada. So the testing that was happening there in the 60s, the 70s was already contaminating. You know, the government was doing it knowing the fact that there's going to be downwinders that are going to be affected by cancer, which we're living now. You know, a lot of my relatives in my village, in my small village, I've noticed the generation above me were affected by all types of cancer, and we're a small tribe. And it started out with the women, and so that also needs to be documented on how many people are passing away. I think in my community, because we're a small community, I'm taking my own notes. I'm taking my own historical notes saying that this generation of women passed away, and no one has any answers of where it's coming from. We know that IHS has clinics within a lot of our tribal communities, so they're keeping notes, but they're not sharing it with our tribes, or they're not sharing it with our leaders. So documenting all of that is very important. And then thirdly, the other thing that we've been doing is documenting our medicine plants. And we started that, I want to say like 10 years ago. And a lot of our elders finally agreed to start documenting this work, the plants and the medicine that's still out there on our sacred mountains. Right next to Pinon Plain Mine is one of my tribes, our tribes, not just mine, sacred mountain called Red Butte, where different paints and different plants were gathered for various purposes. And as we turn into modern Indians, you know, we tend to forget that that's still all there. So rewinding back to the uses and documenting and doing our own scientific research with allies. I know, but I'm tangled up in all of this projects, um, and it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of resources, but that's our ammunition, right? That's our, not just for our arguments in public hearings or court arenas, but it's also for the next generation to say, oh, there were plants here, or here's the data that was left behind. You know, those types of things that we've been really diving into. And hopefully, you know, if this is something that your communities are interested in, we've worked on the path already, and we can help you all with this particular path if this is something you all are interested in. Thank you.
Wow, that is incredible, Carletta. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I remember reading something kind of similar about a community in Africa that did the same thing, where they started documenting all of their cultural resources within their community before the mine came in. So when the mine came and started proposing, the community was like, wait a minute, no way. We already have all this stuff documented. We already did our homework, and you're not allowed to go to that space because it's sacred, right? And that stuff is really powerful. And the sooner you start gathering that data, the better. And in Indian country, we don't have that data, right? Oftentimes, when we go to lobby, for instance, and our decision makers are asking us, well, where's the data? Where's the numbers? And oftentimes we have to document and measure that data on our own, right? And it's important because we need to create these baselines to understand how much harm is being put upon our communities, right, by these extractive industries. So it's very important for us to really start documenting all of our cultural resources within our communities. That way we're getting ahead of the game, right? And I also too I was reading some of the comments on the Facebook live stream, and folks are talking about what's happening in Canada too, right? With I think it's the Bill 5. It's pretty much what's happening here in the US, where they're fast tracking a lot of the extraction up in Canada. So our relatives up north are also dealing with very similar things right now. And it's pretty horrendous. So just want to give a shout out to our relatives up north in Canada who are also under the fire with all of this stuff within their own governments, right? So, okay, let's go ahead and pass it over to Kesa. And just real quickly too, we will be wrapping up in about a little bit, 17 minutes, about 15 minutes. So we do want to leave a little bit of room for Q&A. So after Kesa speaks, we'll probably open it up for a little bit of questions.
Yeah. So some of the things that have worked within our community, well, I think I think one, how you measure success, like that's something that you have to determine too, because I think that a lot of times when we're measuring like whether something's successful in our community, we're measuring it against like colonized standards. And so I do think that we have to kind of reroute that sometimes. But like you could grassroots organize against the project itself. We do like political organizing on a local and state level and a county level against the policies, not necessarily for a specific party or a candidate, but like you want to fight the actual laws itself. We've also like I would also suggest organizing with tribal leaders if they're willing to, but also understanding that if they're not willing to, or if they don't want to move with the group, then the reality is like you don't need them. Like you can go around them and you can go directly to the people and you all can organize together and put pressure on the tribal leaders to like if they're not speaking for the tribe, then they need to get in line. FPIC is important, but I think it's also important to remember that it's only a step in the process. It's not like the end all be all. If your local leaders refuse to adhere, then you have to ask yourself like what resistance really looks like for you and your people, because sometimes resistance is like a necessary part of change. And then the last thing that I'll say is just understanding that like traditional ecological knowledge, like it doesn't just apply to environmental protections, but you can also apply that to how you fight the system. The reality is that a lot of our fights are a continuance of fights that our ancestors have been fighting for centuries in our areas. And so I think going back and looking at like things that worked, things that didn't work, like understanding that we're continuing the fight and that we can always go back and pull from that playbook if we need to. So applying like the idea of traditional ecological knowledge to the fight itself, I think is something that could be really helpful.
Sorry, I was having trouble hitting my little unmute button. Thank you so much. Very great points, Kesa. Thank you for sharing that. And again, we only have about 15 minutes left, and wanted to leave some time too for our panelists to provide any updates or calls to action that they may have in their communities. I know there's a lot going on right now. I know Carla Ray, you may have some around public comments, but if there's any other calls to action that you guys want to share before we open it up for questions, feel free to do that now. And then I also shared your websites in the chat, and feel free to also drop any other links that you want in there for our audiences. So just real quickly, does anybody have any announcements or calls to actions that we can share?
We just got done with like I said, we got done with Solitario Resources and their Ponderosa project, which I should say is that it's very close to a current Sundance ground right now. One of the tribes received land out there, and so that's the other thing is that they only gave us 30 days, but we need to make sure that project does not get any closer. And it is in the Spearfish Canyon, which is a iconic highway, especially in like the fall, and it brings in a lot of revenue for the state of South Dakota. So that's the other thing is that some of especially here in the Black Hills, we've got recreation and a lot of revenue comes into the Black Hills, although we're seeing a huge uptick in housing development stuff too. I wanted to show my screen real quick. Can I show my map now?
Yeah, yes, yes.
I show my map. Our map, I should say. So we've been tracking. We have a person that does this. Our maps the claims. So these are all active mapping claims in the Black Hills. So all the green area, that's the Black Hills National Forest Service. And then all the black squares and stuff you see here are the active mining claims. But there is only one operating large-scale gold mine in the state of South Dakota, which is called Wharf. And Wharf, which is up in this area, is 7.5 miles in circumference. And this is what it looks like. You can drive around up there and stuff. See these little tiny vehicles? You can see that. But because it's an active mine, I did some research. They do have to report to the state of South Dakota if they have any toxic spills, such as they process the gold there, gold and silver, so they do use cyanide. But if they have any type of toxic spill, say cyanide solutions or mining cap gels or diesel, anything like that, they have to report it to the state. So I went in on the state's website and I gathered that data and I used it to actually intervene in their expansion project called the Boston expansion. That it still went through, but I was the only intervener. So, but yeah, these are some of the tools we use. So that's Wharf in 1985. You see it right here. And then you pull this over and that's in 2020. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to show you that. And then we do have a lot of abandoned mines, abandoned new portion of the state. County in the Fall River County, they did push a uranium mining is a nuisance. What would it be called? Declaration, I guess. No, what was it? Resolution through their county commissioners. But because they just said uranium mining, then companies coming in to explore, they're saying that doesn't it's no use to exploration projects where we do have there's a exploration project coming into I'll stop sharing my screen now, but there's an exploration project coming into Craven Canyon, which is a sacred site that's 7,000 years old, pictographs and petroglyphs in that area. So yeah, but other than that, yeah, I don't have any updates right now. So, but we're waiting on some more uranium exploration projects trying to come in through a company called, get this, Clean Nuclear Energy. We just call it CNEC.
Oh God. Yeah, it's funny how they do that. And the companies often change their name too, so it's hard for people to track them.
I know.
And even on the stock market, they do it. They change their little handle or whatever, so it's hard to track them. But that's one of their tactics. And then too, I forgot. I wanted to talk a little bit about some fast track mines here in New Mexico, the La Jera Mesa mine and also the Roca Honda mine. Again, these are two uranium mines that are being proposed here in New Mexico. They're on the fast track 41 list. You know, Roca Honda has been proposed for several years now. Our communities have been organizing to fight it. When I talked about, you know, trying to create a moratorium through the county level, it was that mine that we were fighting against, was the Roca Honda mine. And so, you know, it's all over. We're seeing it all throughout the Southwest and all throughout Indian country. So we have a few more minutes here, about 8 minutes. I definitely want to give our audience a little bit of time to ask questions before we wrap up. So, all right, folks, now's your time. If you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat. If you're on Facebook Live, please let us know, IT folks, so that we can address those questions. And I'm going to pull it up real quickly so I can see if I can find any. But yeah, again, thank you, panelists, for making time to join us this evening. I know that this is heavy work, right? These issues are heavy. They're very emotional. They're sensitive for us for us Native peoples who, you know, are still very much closely connected to our homelands, who are on the land every day, some of us, right? And so, and even accessing some of our cultural landscapes has been more complicated because of these mines, because of different developments. We're no longer able to access some of our very sacred sites, which is again detrimental to the livelihood of Native peoples. So we have a question here. How can we encourage people through our own social media to add to the public comments? Great question. So like Carletta mentioned earlier, I think we're getting more diligent at posting these public comment periods online. I know that Black Hills Clean Water Alliance and Honor the Earth have been partnering lately to really get out there and disseminate information when it comes to the public comment period, really trying to pull together voices. And even doing like a whole webinar to help walk people through where to go to find the link to put a public comment, giving a template for a public comment. We really encourage people to, you know, draft it up in their own words, and make it more personal. So that's a really great way to do it. You know, even hosting your own little webinar in your community to talk about some of these public comment periods in your area would be tremendous, right? And it really does require all of us to do some of this work. So like I said earlier, we're all being impacted on one way or another on some level when it comes to extraction, whether it's uranium or critical mineral mining. You know, they're passing through our communities oftentimes without even our knowledge. And so it's very important for us to have this knowledge so that we can make better informed decisions for ourselves, right? And again, I hope that we can do a series to kind of unpack more about what do these executive orders mean to Indigenous communities? How is it playing out? How are we standing and resisting? And how are we mobilizing? You know, for the most part. Okay, I see one more question. Awesome panel. Thank you so much. Do you think it would be helpful or strategic to draw attention to the fact that so many of the mining companies getting these contracts are foreign? Yes, absolutely. These are multinational corporations. Go ahead, Carla Ray.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of address that because what I see is that so when we say, oh, these are foreign companies, then they're going to get some local people to come in. And that's what like Wharf has done. Their parent company is Core out of British Columbia, but they still a subsidiary in South Dakota. But at the same time, I think the public will see that as well. We can't let these foreign companies come in, but if they're local, that, you know, that might be okay, American made, you know, that type. So that's just my own personal, I don't know, personal feeling about that. It's like I don't think it really matters where they're from. They're still coming in to degrade the land, to tear up Mother Earth, to contaminate the water, to displace our people, you know, displace our plants, displace the wildlife, that type. So I know that's just my own personal view of that. So
If I may mention really quickly, we're Noowuh Knowledge Center hosts the Ruby Valley Treaty Conference. We're having our 5th annual Ruby Valley Treaty Conference, October 3rd through the 5th. And we talk about treaties, our treaty in particular, and the fact that, you know, the government is recognizing our treaty land as public land and doing as they wish with it. But also a big part of this conference is environment. We're always inviting people to come talk about what's happening out on the land, what's occurring, and if they're seeing things that's not. I mean, you know, it's a vast area to look after, but if any of you want to come join us in Ruby Valley, Nevada, on those dates, and hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that really quickly. And also, up to that conference, there are a few of us who are walking our treaty land. We've accomplished walking 50 miles, I think. We try to do 10 miles a section, trying, just being out on the land, being together, singing Shoshone songs, just being a community, and it feels really nice, and it feels very good just to be out on our land. But I just wanted to mention that quickly, and thank you for this wonderful invitation to be on the panel with you all.
Yes, absolutely. And I just saw your message in the chat, Kisa. Would you mind sharing that with everyone?
Yeah, I was just saying that I do think that it's extremely important to point out that these companies are, not necessarily that they're like foreign, but that they are extending the playbook from wherever they are to the so-called US. So I was saying that for our company that we're fighting, Westin Elements, they were originally partnered with CVMR, which is like chemical vapor metallurgy refining. They're a Canadian-based company and they have like 40 years of experience in the field. So basically, like they partnered the two together because Westwind has no experience and then CVMR has all of the experience. Well, then, whenever the push to domesticate the supply chain happened, the partnership between the two dissolved. So now we have Westwind, who's an American-based company, and they can push that America First agenda. And then Westwind also just announced that they have like a huge downstream client now, which is crazy because they don't even have like a provider for the feedstock. But basically that company that they're partnering with, and so they're literally selling those materials right back to China, even though the point is to become non-reliant on China. And so that rhetoric just it doesn't really match up. And so I just think it's important to realize that, or to name the fact that a lot of these projects are being extended from other countries and that it's all in the name of defense and money. It's not really about anything good.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great point, and thank you for highlighting that. I see a few more questions. So let's try to answer maybe one or two more. To any of the panelists, have you considered filing claims in tribal courts? Has anyone tried taking it to their tribal courts? And that's a good question too, because sometimes, our tribal governments may be pro-extractive and our grassroots people aren't. Go ahead, Kisa. I see your hand up.
Yeah, so our call to action is actually that we are looking for a lawyer. We need a lawyer to do a case study. We would prefer it to be an Indigenous lawyer. They don't necessarily have to be able to practice in Oklahoma in order to just do a case study for us. But that is something that we would like to do. We were able to get the Kiowas, the Comanches, and the Apaches to sign on to legislations that stood against the project, but we haven't seen them organize past that. And so we're hoping that getting some sort of consultation from a lawyer would kind of give them a nudge in the right direction. So it's definitely something that we're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. Okay, one more. What are the common impacts of mining on Indigenous communities in the U.S.? Are there laws to protect Indigenous people's rights of ownership and sovereignty? Does anyone want to tackle that?
Not for the Western Shoshone.
For Western Shoshone.
Oh, I
There are
do know that. Oh, I do know that the past mining that we've had here in the Black Hills has contaminated, like from the old Home State Gold Mine. Whitewood Creek was contaminated, and there was 17 miles of creek that was a Superfund site. So, and then in the southern Black Hills where you have past uranium mining, that contaminated the south branch of the Cheyenne River and goes by the Oglala Sioux tribe. In the northern part of the state, they had Slim Butte's uranium mine, which is now under reclamation, and that contaminated the northern part of South Dakota in the Little Marl. So yeah, so the water contamination has been a huge part of historic or legacy mining and cancer numbers. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many impacts to Indigenous communities, and we kind of talked about it throughout this webinar. You know, contamination to the water, soil, air, you know, loss of access to cultural landscapes being desecrated by extraction. You know, and it goes on. I mean, there's so many impacts and pathways of exposure that Indigenous peoples are up against. And I think it was Kesa who mentioned that oftentimes a lot of these standards that are being put out, say by EPA or whatever, are being based off of you know, uh, communities that aren't native, you know, that are basically based off of white populations. And you know, we need to, the demographics are different, and so we need different studies for all of our different communities. I see a lot of chats or a lot of messages in the chat offering assistance for CASA and lawyers. So that's amazing. Thank you guys so much for coming together and offering some support and resources for Westin Resistance and the community there. Absolutely. This is why we want to continue to have webinars. We want to continue to build solidarity across our network. We want to connect highly impacted communities across the board, right? Whether they're native or non-native, we need to work together and really share this information so that, again, we can make better informed decisions for our communities, so that we know what's happening in our backyards and our front yards, right? And so, again, I just want to thank you all so much, Ahiahet, from the bottom of my heart, for making time to be here. I really am going to work on pulling together a series where we can really start unpacking a little bit more of these things, and really highlighting some of these frontline tribal voices who are doing the work on the ground, right? So I know you have one last thing there. Kesa, do you want to add that before we close out?
Oh yeah. I was just saying that I think it's like in regards to whether or not there are like laws that are gonna protect like our rights or ownership or sovereignty. There are treaties that would essentially do that. But if they're not being honored, then essentially what it's going to take is our people coming together and like pushing for that narrative to come to the front. I think that it's important to understand that the system is not necessarily set up to protect us as Indigenous people, but it's to protect the interest of the so-called United States. So I do think it's important to like work with tribal leaders, local leaders, city officials if you can, but also do it understanding that they're not your friend. They're not your enemy, but they're not your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of these agencies are really upholding the status quo, right? And we need to remember that. And oftentimes, yeah, we need to just remember, like, it's going to take long-term organizing and resistance and really amplifying those grassroots voices. So thank you, Kesa, for pointing that out and sharing that with us. Again, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. This was a fantastic conversation. I hope that we can continue it with a series, and we will continue to organize and share this information as time moves on. And again, just super thankful for everybody for making time to tune in this evening. These are important conversations that, you know, we don't often get to have within Indian country, making time to share these different ideas, you know, different issues that we're working on and across our territories. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm very appreciative, and we'll keep you posted on a next webinar. We're hoping to get them out soon. And just to give you a quick a sneak peek, we are planning to host another webinar maybe in a month or so to highlight what's happening in Alaska, because we know that Alaska is being inundated with extraction as well. We have some colleagues who are based in Alaska who are going to help unpack what's happening there on the ground. So stay tuned. We'll be sharing that information as well. And again, thank you to everybody who made time to be here. Thank you to our wonderful panelists who are doing that warrior stuff, every day. It's not easy, and you got to have thick skin to do this work. I appreciate you all. Many blessings to you and your families and your communities. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on IAN. We have our hosts dropping their contact information in the chat as well. And again, we hope to do this pretty soon, a series talking about and amplifying grassroots voices in Indian country. So with that, we'll go ahead and call it a wrap. I thank you everybody once again, and we'll see you next time.
Recording stopped.